I will crush you!
Let's wind back the clocks and take a stroll through Hearthstone's history to uncover the source, the survival, and the perpetual dominance of one of the game's most formidable archetypes, Control Warrior. There's always been some debate about the origins of the archetype itself. However, the household name most often associated with the innovation of Control Warrior is Kit Kats. In Hearthstone's earliest days, before people understood that Garrosh Hellscream was a strong card, Kit Kats managed to assemble all sorts of powerful iterations of Control Warrior. The first versions leaned on a combo that is shocking to modern Hearthstone players. Many can recall a relatively recent Warsong Commander nerf, which changed the card completely, staved off Patron Warrior, and removed the charge activation effect. But did you know that Warsong Commander had a previous and even more broken iteration? You've got to see it to believe it. Warsong used to read, "Your other minions have charge." Yes, all of them. With this in mind, the first Control Warrior iterations used health total management in the assembly of Warsong Commander, Molten Giants, and Youthful Brewmaster for an insanely powerful combo finisher. If playing around Molten Giants was tedious in the heyday of Handlock, imagine if you had to play around charged Molten Giants. Indeed, the earliest days of Control Warrior were insane. The balance adjustment to Warsong Commander was swift, and Control Warrior finally started to piece together its true identity, a class that would seek to stall opponents out of the game entirely, and if they had anything left, would stomp on them with insanely powerful finisher minions. Here's a quick look at what the pre-Naxxramas Control Warrior list shaped up to be after the initial Warsong nerf. Amidst the other early archetype giants such as pre-nerf Miracle Rogue, pre-nerf Freeze Mage, and pre-nerf Zoo, Control Warrior became a counter-meta staple, holding reactive and consistent win conditions against all of Hearthstone's early proactive decks. A few things you may not know about some cards back in the early days. First, Sylvanas Windrunner used to cost 5 mana. The staple combo then was Sylvanas and Brawl, which nearly guaranteed full board clear plus tempo all the time. Second, Nat Pagle used to be an auto-include in any control deck, as he used to activate the draw effect at the end of your turn rather than the start of your next turn. Third, Tinkmaster Overspark used to be targeted and was considered more or less the neutral polymorph card. All three of these cards saw nerfs as Hearthstone shifted towards Naxxramas era. Sylvanas moved to 6 mana, Nat drew at the start of your next turn, and Tinkmaster's effect became randomly targeted on either side of the board. These changes coincided with all sorts of nerfs to the other dominant archetypes of Hearthstone's beta, and Control Warrior didn't die out at any point in this period. However, Naxxramas introduced a fast pace to the meta that to this day has only continued to speed up. With the addition of Goblins vs. Gnomes, more powerful and more aggressive options further sped up the meta, from Undertaker to Haunted Creeper to Nerubian Egg in the shade of Naxxramas, and then from Glaive Zuka and Implosion to Fell Reavers and Dr. Boom. The go-to meta decks played powerful minions on turns 1 through 3, then had an unbelievable up-tempo mid-game to follow and continue to pressure their opponents. Control Warrior had to redefine itself in the image of this metagame's aggressive landscape. Several additions from Naxxramas and GVG became permanent staples in Control Warrior. This was also around the time that the proverbial Fibonacci became a household name for iterating successfully upon the archetype. Leading all the way up to the standard rotation itself, it was hard to imagine the archetype without the following cards. A few other smaller players have found their way in and out of lists, serving as tech cards that could adjust nicely to meet the shape of the proactive side of the meta. The long story short of this reshaping era of Control Warrior was simply that the archetype became truly understood and defined. Control Warrior kept the aggressive decks in check, it was championed by players who wanted to use their understanding of the game to create advantages in their matchups, and it became one of those decks that always came to mind when future expansions, or balance patches, were announced. It was official. Control Warrior became one of Hearthstone's trademark archetypes. The release of the Grand Tournament expansion seemed to offer tools that would maximize the very mechanics that made Control Warrior strong to begin with. While it took some time for the cards to catch on, Justicar Trueheart, which changed Armor Up to Tank Up, alongside Bash, providing flexible single target removal, in combination with Armor Gain, pushed Control Warrior into a new mold. For years, the deck's strategy was to stall and then punish with big finishers. Now, the only reasonable way to win most games with the archetype was to simply stall. Whether you labeled the style a concede deck or a fatigue deck, a true shift in how players theory-crafted Control Warrior took place. Famous warrior pilots like Xiao VLPS, Naviute, and of course Fibonacci led to Control Warrior's finest days, allowing it to coast to rank 1 legend numerous times, including several rank 1 legend season finishes with the deck. League of Explorers piled onto this mentality. Some players assembled Reno Jackson inclusive Control Warriors, bringing in sleepers like Bouncing Blade, Revenge, and Crush to compensate for the vacuum of one-of removal cards. League offered to the archetype a single card that would serve as an as-needed basis for a finisher-based win condition: Elise Starseeker. Twitter feeds and Hearthstone Reddit posts were filled with previously unimaginable situations for Control Warrior: a 9 legendary hand with an activated Reno Jackson, Tyrian Forging, and Deathwing. An armor total eclipsing 100 as the opponent conceded with cards in hand. Armor totals exceeding 50 on both sides of the board, and what became dubbed as the Resonant Sleeper mirror, often decided by who threw the game by accidentally getting Acolyte fed to them through Sylvanas Shield Slam. Truly, with the fatigue-style tools of these sets, Control Warrior was standing triumphantly as one of the most interesting, most complex, most unique, and most powerful archetypes ever. Control Warrior at this time became a dominating force in its own niche, so much so that it seemed like it would never budge. Then along came the old gods, who seemed to be whispering right into Garrosh's ear saying,
here's a few tools to completely rethink how you do things.
Xiao was the first big name to capitalize on the gifts from the old gods. Using a select set of Cthulhu buff cards, the powerful effects of Ancient Shieldbearer, Twin Emperor Veclor, and of course Cthulhu offered all sorts of things the archetype wasn't even looking for at the time: flexibility, tempo, removal, sustain, and game-ending combos. In what was perhaps Hearthstone's most ridiculous meta of all time, the Cthulhu Control Warrior mirror match became a tedious and wonderfully complex matchup. Fatigue and having a 10-card unplayable hand were so scary that anti-cycle plays like the following were common: playing Slam on your own minion with 2 health left, whirlwinding empty boards to get rid of cards, shield slamming your own Acolyte to prevent cycle. On top of all this ridiculousness, with the addition of Doomcaller to the list to help with the control matchups, especially the mirror match, things really started to get crazy. High legend ladder games and entire tournaments were decided with plays that literally baffled less experienced, average Hearthstone players. Decisions so non-intuitive and seemingly self-inflicting were actually the strongest. Like playing your own Cthulhu and then coining out a Shield Slam to kill on the same turn so your opponent couldn't steal it. The best of all, and often a literally game-winning play, playing your own Sylvanas, shield slamming it to steal the opponent's Cthulhu, and then shield slamming the stolen Cthulhu to death on your side of the board so your opponent couldn't bring it back. This was of course followed by the brand Doomcaller combo, which put 2 Cthulhus back in your deck and caused your opponent to immediately concede. All this was a result of only one of Control Warrior's new iterations during the Old Gods meta. What became the longer standing and more dominant style was Fibonacci's N'Zoth Control Warrior. This list featured Cairn Bloodhoof, Sylvanas Windrunner, Infested Tauren, and even Twilight Summoner, all of which returned on the game-ending N'Zoth play. Lastly, while on the topic of fascinating Control Warrior adaptations, a brief mention of Purple's Karazhan Fatigue Warrior seems fitting. Purple made it into the top 10 by stalling a game out using tools like 2 copies of Fool's Bane and Gorehowl. With both players nearly exhausted of cards, the following OTK Fatigue combo would seal the deal: Bran Bronzebeard, Violet Illusionist, and 2 Coldlight Oracles. After passing the turn, the opponent will have drawn 9 cards, the warrior taking 0 fatigue damage because of the illusionist effect, and the opponent oftentimes taking more than OTK value in lethal fatigue damage. At the time when Justicar and the infinite tank up armor seemed like the most ridiculous ways Control Warrior would assemble a win condition, the subsequent expansions offered all sorts of new flavors to this enduring archetype. The release of Mean Streets and subsequently Ungoro initiated a new era for the deck. Put simply, Small-Time Buccaneer and Patches made decks so fast that dying on turn 5 was likely against 3 entire classes. On the flip side, the only way to counter this aggression was to build a Reno deck. This would have been fine and well for Warrior, but Reno's insanely powerful counterpart, Kazakus, was deemed a Cabal class-only card, leaving Warrior on the sideline for the Highlander archetype. To make matters worse, Jade Idol was printed, making Control Warrior's stall, fatigue, and outvalue strategies completely irrelevant. Throughout the Mean Streets meta, Warrior managed to scrape by with limited success. Married to the archetype, players like Fibonacci, VLPS, and Naviute assembled 100% reactive lists, running 2 copies of Dirty Rat, Ali Armorsmith, and sometimes even dropping Grommash, Sylvanas, and Ragnaros, since you were often staring down lethal before you could even play some of these cards. The Year of the Mammoth and the Ungoro editions made the archetype even more confused. The meta remained just as fast, with Pirate Warrior, Quest Rogue, and Murloc Paladin now all setting the meta to a turn 5 lethal pace. Staples like Justicar, Sylvanas, Bash, and Revenge rotated out. The Warrior quest Fireplume's Heart was printed, which made many Warrior players move towards taunt-centric decks. As things settled down, it felt like you could either smork it out with Warrior, or you could play the quest, drop taunts, and finish things off with a Sulfurous quest reward. This status was fine and well for the viability of Warrior, which held 2 of the tier 1 spots for weeks after the expansion. But Control Warrior, as an identity, was completely warped. Players were insistent that Quest Warrior wasn't Control Warrior. For this reason, Warrior's soulmate players like Fibonacci were stubbornly insistent on pushing deck lists that ignored the quest. Late game cards like Elise the Trailblazer and Direhorn Hatchling came alongside new ways of clearing boards like Sleep with the Fishes for lists that were viable, but it seemed that true success could only be found in the hands of a Control Warrior god player, who were willing to grind endless games at the right times with well-teched lists. Their efforts weren't futile, but for most players and for the community at large, the Control Warrior archetype in its truest form seems fairly unplayable in the competitive modes of Hearthstone right now. As we look to the future of Control Warrior, here's what we know to be true. The archetype has endured every change in Hearthstone since Alpha. Control Warrior has gone through dozens of completely different styles and continued to be found at the highest ranks of Legend Ladder in every single Hearthstone ranked season. Likewise, the staples of the deck have rarely disappeared from any list during its history, and all these cards will be in the standard pool indefinitely, as far as we know. The archetype is inherently one of the most reactive in the game. It's likely that given a bit more time and a meta that's a bit more settled, we may very well see the return of Control Warrior in its true form. With 2 more 130 plus card expansions slated for this year, the archetype is sure to make a loud and powerful return. Come victory or death, Control Warrior will endure, as it always has. Like a dormant volcano, its fiery return is no doubt on the horizon, a sleeping giant, waiting activation, ready to unleash its newest flavor of Hellscream on the Hearthstone ladder again.
Ruktar Ogre!
We hope you enjoyed this mini documentary. Please share your thoughts in the comments section of the video. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and check out all of our other Hearthstone content.